Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the 26th edition of Rendez-Vous with French Cinema. My name is Florence Almosini. I'm a senior programmer at Filmmaker Center, and I'm also the head curator for Rendez-Vous with French Cinema selection. So I want to welcome you to the festival. It's our annual collaboration that we do every year with, obviously it's annual, with Filmmaker Center and Unifrance. This year we have a great selection of 18 films that we are showing virtually, as you know. And today I'm very honored to introduce the director of Should the Wind Drop, Nora Martirosyan. And we will discuss our first feature film, and we'll ask question. Unfortunately, no audience question, but I think I know what people want to know. So, hello, Nora. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the Rendezvous Festival.
Hi, hello.
So it's your first feature film. It seems a very personal film that is set in a region of South Caucasus that has been in the news during all last year. I know it's a film that you took quite a while to make, and you have a background as a visual artist and a painter. So I wanted maybe to ask you first, like, about the origin of the project and why you decided to make a film. Actually, even so it's based on reality, it's still a fiction film. And why you decided to make this film, and maybe a little bit about the process to make it.
Indeed, I come from a background of a visual artist, painter first, and then I was making contemporary art videos. And 11 years ago, for the first time, I went to this republic in South Caucasus, Nagorno-Karabakh, Mountain Karabakh. And I was really amazed by the absurdity of the situation. So there was a country that physically was in front of me with the infrastructures, the parliament, the president, school, flag. And politically and juridically, it had no existence. So it was not on the maps. What I would see on the world maps didn't correspond to what was the physical reality. So this absurdity of a self-proclaimed republic made me wonder what is the way to bring this amazing contradiction to be seen by the world. And I said, well, it should be cinema. 11 years ago, and I told to myself it should be fiction, because the story by itself, it contains the fiction. So to document it, I think it wouldn't explore all the fictional potential of the existence of this republic. So I decided to make a film, a fiction film. And I've never made one, and I've never read a scenario in my life. So that's why also the way to make it was that long. It took 11 years. But also it was very clear that I didn't want to tell a story, a family story or a war story, or I wanted to make a film where the center is the country. And it is not that easy to defend this kind of a project. You know, when you go to the commissions to get money for the film and you say your scenario is to speak about the country, it is complicated because normally you are more attached to the character. So it also took a long time to write the characters that would depict the country, that would tell about themselves and the country, to make kind of a portrait by all these characters, to make the portrait, the landscape of this country.
So it was indeed something personal for you, but then when you bring the main character, who's actually a French actor played by Grégoire Colin, in a way, he introduced you to the story, the situation, the country, and the people. So that allows you to show all the intricate and surreal situation really in one go. And I assume that was maybe your point when you bring someone from the outside inside the region and the story and the country.
Yeah, indeed. When I was doing my backs and forth with the countries during all these years, because I was traveling a lot, at a certain point I met the airport, and the airport that I saw that existed physically and that didn't have any planes arriving or departing. I told to myself, it's really like this country. It's the symbol of the country that is not allowed to that has no recognition, but that exists physically. And I said, okay, the story should come from this airport. And to get into the story, to get into the country, I need an external character. So I brought a French auditor, played by Grégoire Colin, to check if this airport technically is able to receive and to send the planes. So we enter the country with a French Occidental character who is not really interested. He is there just to make his job as he would do anywhere else. And slowly through his eyes, we discover, and as he becomes more and more attentive, my aim was that the public also becomes more and more attentive. And then at a certain point, the character believes that he can change things. And as we are with this character, I hope that the public also believes that the things can be changed. So to bring an Occidental character was to bring the public with me to this place, have no interest towards it, and then start liking it. Maybe it's not the right word, but starting hoping, starting believing into the fiction, as all the inhabitants of the country do believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a little bit in the first part that you wanted to make a fiction film, not a documentary. Even so, it seems at first a documentary would have been way easier to make as the first film. But when you're writing the script, and which I understand is a long process, were you already thinking about mixing the tones, with the fictional approach and the documentary approach? Because this is based on so many real things, but you want to bring something bigger to the story. So when you were writing and you co-wrote the film, were you already thinking about how you were going to mix all this? Or that came kind of later also when you were filming and when you were shooting in the region?
In fact, every scene that I wrote was based on the experience of a particular place. So, for example, while traveling in the country in Nagorno-Karabakh, I realized, okay, this is an interesting spot. This is important to show it. What can be the action? What can be the action that is placed in this place? So I thought that, for example, the forest was important because the forest can hide the border, and we don't see the border because it's in the forest, so we don't see it. So I knew that it's important to have the scenes in the forest. I knew that it's important to show the city. So I wrote the scenes but everything in the script. In fact, there is nothing documentary. It is just, it's funny because normally, you write a fiction story and then you send people or you go yourself to look for to do location scouting. Mm-hmm. In fact, I didn't need to do location scouting because the film was written after the location scouting. So I scouted the places, I understood my geography, and then I wrote the fiction. So in this sense, it is close to the documentary because it is based on the locations, but the characters and the story are invented, and what the interaction is, it's a fictional. And I think it's also very important. In fact, what does it, as I am not coming from the cinema background, and it's very easy to say a fiction film or a documentary film, but what does it mean fiction? What does it mean fiction? Is the fiction a mirror of the reality, or is, when we say a fiction, is an attempt to raise the reality to something different? So, well, this was the question I was asking myself. So if I call it like administratively, I call my film, it's a fiction, but what do I suggest? It's not a mirror. The fiction is not a mirror. The fiction is something that makes you imagine or transform the reality. And inside of the film, so there is this little boy who is transforming the reality. There is this water that is transformed through his desire. And as he desires it so much, this fiction, well, the other people do believe, and it becomes the reality. So for me, these terms that are so easily used as documentary or fiction or reality and fiction, I tried really question them while writing the script of the film.
We know that there was a war that came to the country last year. Even so, it was a long process. It's also mentioned in the film because like no one in Europe really cared, because it was all about Yugoslavia at the time, and then the other conflicts in the world were kind of erased or not really brought up, as not as many journalists going there. But it came back last year. You shot the film before, before, I assume.
Yeah, before.
Before, okay. But I find this quite incredible that you made such a movie, even so it took 10 years, about a region that, as most people, I didn't really know a lot about. It seems far, it's small. You're thinking, okay, I know this Armenia and I know Azerbaijan, but like what's happening in between? And the timing of your film coming like that I saw when we were talking about the region seems really incredible. So obviously it's not something you could have predicted, but can you maybe like comment a little bit about maybe that changed the way you were making the film or the way you perceive your film?
So the first war of Nagorno-Karabakh ended in '94. And in '94, the borders of this self-proclaimed republic were drawn in '94. Since '94 till 2020, November, this non-recognized border were physically existing. And the film that I made speaks about this country during this 28 years of the status of ceasefire. And the film, it speaks about the fact that this is how it is to live on the volcano. You never know at which moment it will start erupting. And this is something that you strongly feel when you are there. You feel that you are on the volcano. And when you go there with the team, with the partly French, partly Armenian team to shoot, you know that you are, in some sense, you are in danger. It is very peaceful, and well, in the film you see how peaceful are all those landscapes and people and the city, but the possibility of the war is content in this peace. So we shooted the film in 2018. It took some time editing, and then there was this scan selection, which was really amazing to have this scan selection of the film in 2020. And in September, there was our Paris premiere on 26. And when we woke up next morning, 27th, we learned that the war started there. The war lasted 44 days, and the borders inside of which I shooting my film, which was my, let's say, decor, my geography, it has been changed. There are places that are not accessible for Armenians anymore. There are the village, for example, it is now on the other side. So all the people that we see in the film living in this village, the houses, the animals, it is left on the other side and the people flew away. So the film became an archive. I didn't desire this because the film was the hope for the peace, but it became an archive of the situation, of the way of thinking. That was this way of thinking that we had there for 30 years and which is not there anymore. So it was very complicated because the promotion of the film was parallel to the war. So every morning I had the news from the friends, from the airport, from people that I knew there and who were under the bombing. And in the evening, I was speaking to the public about the film, and it was, and it is still very complicated to find the words and to carry this film, which became suddenly much heavier than what I was supposed to carry, because I was trying to speak about the fiction. It was more poetical incarnation of a geopolitical situation. I didn't want to speak about geopolitical, and there is, you know, I don't say what exactly is happening. And suddenly this all became a terrifying reality. And I'm still learning. I don't know yet how things will go on, but I still learn how to speak about the film in this new context.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible story. It's a double story. The story of making the film, which was a complete journey, and then the incredible reality that caught up with you and went further. So when I watched the film, it was very bizarre because, as you mentioned, it's like, it's an archive in a way. It's what it was, what could have been, and changed so brutally. So it's, I'm sure as a filmmaker, it's heavy to carry something like this. And especially if you're attached to the people over there.
And also, I think it questions what is the responsibility of a filmmaker, because, you know, we do make films about all kinds of subjects, about very sad subjects, but what is your responsibility to carry afterwards? In fact, this thing, it becomes kind of, it becomes for me, a responsibility to carry. It's funny because when I was writing my the director's note to get the financing for the film, I was writing that okay, there is no political recognition of this place, but if the film will exist and if it will find its public, this country will have cinematographic recognition. And in some sense, we cannot say that this place is not seen by cinema. It wasn't seen by international politics during the war. The world once again turned the head away, said, "Oh, we're really inquiet, worried. Oh, we're really worried of what is happening there. Oh, we're really worried." And then, you know, just turning the heads away, all the international community. But the film is there and it says, okay, that's how it was. It is kind of a proof of a world that has disappeared.
So metaphorically, your film is like the airport. It makes it exist for internationally in a way. But I also wanted to ask you a little bit about the making of the film, which is about the casting. Because again, as a first film, it was a fairly ambitious casting, where you have international actors, non-professional actors, children, which is always something that can go really wrong in movie and it's probably difficult. You have quite a star with Grégoire Colin. So you have different languages and different levels of professionalism in the acting world. So can you talk a little bit about this aspect of putting all the cast together?
You know, there is this famous phrase of Mark Twain, we didn't know that it was impossible, so we made it. And in fact, it was when I started shooting the film that everybody told me, are you crazy? Your international casting, children, animals, fire, how? And I think I was so unconscious of the difficulty that I thought that it's possible, and it became possible because the team was amazing. So first of all, the 4 main Armenian characters, the director of the airport, the crazy man, the journalist, and the driver, they are professional theater actors. And from the French side, there is Grégoire Colin. So first of all, when I was looking for an actor to play the role of the auditor, my casting director, he was asking me, how do you imagine him? Big, small, fat? And I said, normal. I just want a normal man. And it's funny because he looked at me, you know, he said, it's strange because normally everybody want somebody particular. And I said, no, it's just a normal man. And slowly, inside of this normality, we can maybe discover some depth. So when Grégoire Colin was asking for indication for the play before we went to Karabakh, I told him, you know, I don't know how to play this role. I don't know. We have to discover it together. You meet people, you go drink with them, you walk in the city, you buy apricots, and then we see how you will react. And we really didn't know what Alain Delage would become. And then we arrived to the place, and slowly Grégoire really started liking Stepanakert, and he was going out and drinking all night. He had his own life that I didn't know about. And then we would meet again on the set, and he was strong with this experience, not with his past in France, his life, his psychology. No, these experiences made him more how do you call it, transparent to receive something else, to believe to something else with the characters there. And what is also interesting, none of my Armenian actors speak English or French. So in fact, they learned by heart the texts. And I recorded my own voice telling all the texts. So in fact, Grégoire, who is very he likes improvising in text a bit. He like changes the things. When he was in dialogue with these actors, if he would change a bit, they wouldn't know how to react because they didn't speak language. So if he wouldn't say yes, but he would say maybe, they would block because they didn't know how to react. So it was a very complex thing. And what I really loved in the way how they worked together is that it was not, they were not against, they were trying to carry each other and to be attentive to each other, to another language, to another way of seeing, to another way of playing. And I think that there is something very, how do you say it? Content, you know, not content, no, une pudeur, comment on dit?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I think that the actors play in a very kind of not demonstrative
Okay.
way.
Like internally,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe like more secretive.
Yes,
Light.
something inside. So there is no demonstration of anything by any of the actors. And the emotion, it is not shown. I think, I hope it is felt.
Yes.
And I think that was Grégoire who put this tone in the beginning, because as he was arriving, he was playing in a very like close and secret way. So the others had to adjust to this way of playing. And what is also interesting, that when we arrived there, and when after, let's say, 1-2 weeks of shooting, the character of Alain Delage starting appearing, because we didn't know who is Alain. I didn't know who is Alain Delage. I just wrote about him. And then through Grégoire, Alain Delage started appearing. And we understood, for example, that he's sweating when it is very hot, and that he, how, you know, his hair is in the wind. And we started discovering Alain Delage. And then reading the text, we discovered that there are some things, some dialects that doesn't correspond to our Alain Delage. So with Grégoire, in the evenings, we were going through the text and changing. So there are some scenes that we changed, and the end was also changed because the film that we made didn't correspond completely to the scenario that I was that I wrote. And we were, yeah, it was kind of knitting. We were knitting the film. We were knitting the film during the shooting, but I was also knitting it during the editing, because I did the biggest part of the editing myself. The music was also part of this knitting. We didn't know. In fact, we didn't know nothing, but we had the idea of the direction we should take.
It was a vague direction, because you said you wanted a normal man, and then you got more like an adventurer and someone who can play action, but in a very internal way too. So it was in a way the perfect person to play Alain in the film. And he has this interaction with the rest of the actors and the children and everyone, but really match really well, I think. So it was it worked out really well.
No, thank you. Thank you. And for example, you know, there is this scene when he's jumping for the first time over the kind of a fence. And we shot this scene, and as Grégoire physically, he's very able. He jumped, you know, a bit like a cat. And then we had some problems with this scene because of the light or optic, so we had to shoot it again. And he had to jump over. It was 10 days later. And then he told me, in fact, no, Alain Delage, he cannot jump like a cat. He has to jump like a normal man. So he jumped in a different way. So we readjusted things while discovering the character of who is our auditor, Alain Delage.
He made himself heavier. I also wanted to ask you about the cinematography of the film, because it's there's nearly like a texture when I saw the film, the light on the landscape, but also of the people, and that's a difficult combination to achieve. So can you talk a little bit about your work with the cinematographer? I think it was Simon Roca.
Yes, it's Simon Roca. When we were preparing the film, there were a few directions that I would like to explore. One was, how do you film the landscapes, not like landscapes, not like a decoration, but as a space, as a cinematographic space. So I think so it was important for me to bring a cinematographer from France. So I needed to have a way to see these landscapes as Alain Delage would see them for the first time, with no a priori, with no idea of what does it normally look like, to discover it with him. So Simon Roca also was discovering the landscape and was asking himself a question, okay, how do I shoot it? And how do we put the camera in a way to tell the spaces, to tell, for example, the airport. How do you tell the airport in the images? So one thing was the spaces. The second thing was kind of a minimalist. One of the examples that I told to him were paintings of Giotto, for example, the frescoes of Giotto, where there is architecture or a space or a landscape, and the character which is inside of this architecture or space. How do they interact? How the red wall interacts with the character which is dressed in yellow. So this was one of the inspirations, let's say. And the scene, for example, in front of the hospital, I really wanted something as flat as you see in Giotto's frescoes. And then there is the light. How does the light lies on the faces? And Simone is very attentive to the natural light. We didn't light a lot. We were putting the reflectors, so we were trying just to redirect the natural light.
Well, I'm going to make a brief final question. Has the film been shown in Armenia and in Azerbaijan? Have people seen the film there?
The film was supposed to open the festival in Yerevan,
okay,
which is Golden Apricot on the 1st of November. And the war started in the end of September, and the war was still there on the 1st of November. And the film was shown in front of the public in Yerevan, among whom people were losing their families, their kids in that war. So it was a very tragic moment. And it was also the moment when the borders were just closed in France, so I couldn't go there. So it was shown twice, and they wanted to show it more. And normally the release was postponed already 3 times in Armenia. Now we have a date in March. And again, the country which is living such a grief today, it is a very big question. How do I go there with my film? And how do I show this film to the people who went through such a tragedy? And does it make sense or not? And it is still to discover. But for sure, for Armenians, what I hear, it makes sense that the film is there and they desire to see it and to see what kind of international road it will make. But personally, I don't know. I will be like in March probably for the first time in front of the Armenians and show the film, and I don't know what it would look like.
Well, thank you so much. It was really great to talk to you about your film, Should the Wind Drop. I hope you'll have continued success in cinema, visual art, painting, whatever you want to do, because you're extremely talented. And I hope the audience in New York will love the film as much as I do. So thank you so much, Nora.
Thank you very much for your questions and for the discussion. And for the viewers, enjoy the screening of the film.
Thank you.